23rd. I'm very happy to say Mr Farage joins us now live from central London. Nigel Farage, good morning to you. Listened, as I'm sure many of our viewers did, very carefully to your speech, and I picked out one line in particular. You said, we want good people to come to our country. What constitutes a good person? How do you decide how good somebody is?
Well, look, I mean, the point is that if you have the total free movement of people, and if you have a British passport that effectively has now been extended to 508 million people, sure, lots of great people are going to come here from France and Germany and Poland, and they'll be hard-working, great people who will integrate into our society. But what the free movement of people has also done is to open up the doors to trafficking gangs, whether it's drugs or human beings. It's opened us up to criminal gangs. And what we should be doing is what every normal country in the world does. Normal countries decide who is suitable to come and settle in their country.
Can't we just tighten up criminal checks?
Well,
Can't we just tighten up criminal checks? Can't we just tighten up criminal checks?
Well, we are not allowed, as members of the European Union, to stop even known criminals from coming into our country unless they pose a terrorist threat to our integrity as a nation. So a simple way of doing it, and the Australians do this, they want people with skills and trades. They don't want people who've got criminal records or who've got chronic medical conditions, and that's how countries do things.
You're not keen on the Turks either, are you? You said in your speech, I paraphrase part of your speech, you said it's in danger of stopping being a German racket and becoming a Turkish racket.
Well, I admire the way Turkey are negotiating, and I wish that David Cameron had anything like their negotiating skills. I mean, at the moment, they've got €6 billion promised to them. They've got visa-free travel coming in from October of this year, and they've been promised membership of the European Union by 2025. And by the way, I'm not going to take that question. You said I don't like the Turks. I've got nothing against Turkey or the Turks, but I'm worried that if we extend the free movement of people to a country of 77 million people, where average incomes are even lower than Romania and Bulgaria, then what we'll see is yet another huge migrant tide coming into the United Kingdom. And frankly, our public services can't cope with any more.
You did criticise the Remainers, or at least those who lead the Remain campaign, for being, quote, rich and I will quote verbatim rather than paraphrase this time, you're absolutely right to pick me up, as being rich and privileged. Some people might say, OK, rich and privileged? I mean, Nigel Farage is not exactly on his uppers. Who's he to criticise?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a country estate quite as big as relations of the Prime Minister and many others, and my number of domestic staff is relatively few, like let's try zero. Now, the point I'm making is this: there is no question that open-door immigration has been a really good thing for big business because it gives people access to unlimited amounts of cheap labour, and for the rich, it's been an absolute boon, with cheaper nannies, cheaper chauffeurs and cheaper gardeners. The argument I'm making is for the vast majority of the population, they find it more difficult to get a house, more difficult to get healthcare, very much more difficult to get their children into a local primary school, and their real income, if they're on average salaries, has gone down by 10% since 2008. The poor and the less well-off are paying a hell of a price for a privileged few.
John Major, former Prime Minister John Major, interviewed this morning. I'll quote part of what he said. Our relationship with America would wither. This is in the event of us voting to leave. America needs an ally inside the EU, and it could no longer be us. I mean, people trust the judgment of an elder statesman like John Major, and he's pretty clear about that. He said that that crucial relationship, and you said a lot of store by it as well, that transatlantic relationship, would wither. That's the word he used. Would it?
Well, I remember John Major very well. I was a businessman. I wasn't involved in politics at all. And then John Major, as Chancellor of the Exchequer, signed us up in October 1990 to the exchange rate mechanism. He told us it would make us a better off country. It led, I think, to the worst ever self-inflicted economic disaster with, by September 1992, record house repossessions, record business bankruptcies. given John Major's track record on these things, it might be better if he made fewer predictions for the future.
One part of your speech that will perhaps be picked up by in some of the newspapers tomorrow will be what you had to say about Cologne. I mean, the events of what happened in Cologne on New Year's Eve, much reported and disputed as well by some people. There will be your critics who will say you're invoking images of sex pests and all the rest of it bound for Britain, criminal gangs. And it's not a realistic representation of the sorts of people who perhaps are fleeing conflict or at the very least fleeing poverty. You're creating caricatures, and that's not helpful.
We live in a liberal Western democracy. 100 years ago, women went to work in the munitions factories. Women earned their first proper pay packets. Women went to the pub. Women then got the vote. And we now live in a country where equality is not perfect, but my goodness me, in 100 years, we've come a long way. The absolute honest cultural truth is there are many countries in the Middle East where women do not enjoy those same liberal values and way of life as we do. And look, you know, I'm not trying to scaremonger, but what happened in Cologne happened. And it was, frankly, an abomination. And I don't want it to happen on the streets of this country. And the only way I can guarantee that it's not going to happen on the streets of this country is if we leave the European Union and take back control of our lives. I'm afraid to have allowed, as Merkel has done, to have allowed the unlimited flow of young males into Germany from countries where women are not even at best second-class citizens directly led to what happened on that night.
Well, I mean, you know, we can dispute this, can't we? But it was appalling policing, and the senior police officer in charge resigned. And to read across and say, OK, that happened in Germany, ergo it would happen in Britain if those people moved to the UK, is a leap of faith, isn't it? Because it's based on the idea that our policing is as bad as the Germans, and you'd hope it isn't.
Well, why take the chance? Why should we want to take the chance? Why should we want people that have perpetrated acts like that, and I hope in most cases will be convicted of those acts, why should we, because in a few years' time, when they get one of these, okay, which is a European, used to be a British passport, it's a European Union passport, why should we want people like that to be able freely to come to our country? I would suggest we don't.
Nigel Farage, thanks very much indeed for your time this morning. Thanks a lot. Let's return to our top story now. The public row over anti-Semitism that, according to some people,